He looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. Bloodshot. Wet. Weak. He had one hand gripping the edge of the sink like it was holding him up, the other still trembling from what had just happened. His collar was wrinkled, tie loosened. Wine splashed across his shirt like a target. His knuckles red, but not from a fight. There hadn't been a fight. Not the kind people could see, anyway. Outside that bathroom door, there were jazz violins and clinking champagne flutes and a ballroom full of people who still thought this was a celebration. But for me, it had just ended. I'd walked in on something. Not physical, not obvious, but something worse. Worse, because it wasn't loud. It wasn't sloppy or sexual or accidental. It was the kind of thing you can only see if you know someone inside and out. And I knew her. God help me, I thought I did. The ballroom had been bathed in gold light. My wife had been glowing. Not because of me. Barrett, that was his name. Her coworker. The one she barely talked to. She said his name like it was sour in her mouth. Like he was irrelevant. But I'd seen how she looked at him when he wasn't looking. And then I saw how she looked at him when she thought I wasn't looking. That's what broke me. Not a kiss. Not a text. Not a hotel receipt. Just a look. You don't hold someone's gaze like that across a crowded room unless there's something underneath. You don't laugh before someone finishes their joke unless you already know the punchline, because you've heard it in bed. It happened near the dessert table. Barrett reached past her, didn't even touch her, and she flinched like she'd forgotten people were watching. Then she smiled too quickly, looked around, and adjusted her dress like something had just shifted inside her. I watched the whole thing from behind the espresso machine. I don't even drink espresso. 15 minutes later, I was in the hotel bathroom, gripping the sink like it could explain what I'd just seen. That's when the door creaked open. Footsteps. Then a voice. "You all right, man?" Barrett. He stepped up next to me at the mirror, casual as hell. Not a care in the world. He adjusted his tie. Green, of course. The same damn green she used to paint her toenails in college. Then he said, "You clean up nice. Didn't recognize you at first." He smirked at me through the reflection, like we were in on some joke together. Then he zipped up his jacket, ran a hand through his hair, and added, "If it makes you feel better, it didn't start how you think." And he walked out. Just like that. No confession. No apology. No detail. Just enough. Enough to make me question everything. Enough to leave me staring at the man in the mirror. The one who just realized his marriage was over. And no one in that ballroom had even noticed. When I walked out of that bathroom, I didn't go back to the ballroom. I stood in the hallway, between the velvet curtains and a fake potted tree, like I was waiting for someone. But I wasn't. I just needed a moment to figure out how I was supposed to re-enter that world. The world where my wife was still smiling, still introducing me as my husband Nolan, still sipping champagne like nothing happened. I knew I should go back in, act normal, keep the night from unraveling in front of all those polished, LinkedIn profile humans. But I couldn't. Not after what Barrett said. It didn't start how I think. What does that even mean? How did it start, then? Was it a joke? A slow flirt? A drunken mistake? Or was it worse? Something intentional, deliberate, the kind of betrayal that didn't even come with guilt? I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were still shaking a little, like the bones inside knew something the rest of me hadn't accepted yet. I opened Corinne's texts. Nothing suspicious. Just her usual robotic work messages, lists of deadlines, dinner plans, and on my way from earlier that night. All clean. Sanitized. But I scrolled further back. Weeks. Months. I was looking for something. Anything. That would make me feel crazy. Because I wanted to be crazy. I wanted to believe I was reading into things too much. That Barrett's comment was just a test. That maybe I was the one with the problem. But then I found the screenshot. It was buried in her photo gallery, mixed in with recipe clips and Pinterest boards and pictures of her with her team at some marketing offsite in Denver. I opened it. A text conversation between her and someone named R. There was no contact photo. No last name. The messages weren't explicit. There was no "I miss your body" or "last night was amazing" garbage. That would have been almost too easy. No, these were smarter. Cleaner. Like a conversation that could slip past any snooping husband's radar. Except one line stuck with me, and it hit like a crack in my ribs. "I keep thinking about your hand on my back during the meeting. You always know when I need grounding." That's not a work text. That's not innocent. That's not something you say to someone you don't want to touch you again. And if R was who I suspected it was, if R was Barrett Reynolds, then it meant this had been going on for a while. Long enough that she was emotionally connected. Long enough that she felt safe enough to save the screenshot, like it was a favorite song lyric. Something she read when she needed a little dopamine hit. I didn't go back into the ballroom after that. I walked out of the venue, into the cold air, down 3 blocks until the noise faded. I didn't even tell her I was leaving. Let her wonder. Let her play catch up for once. When I finally got home, I sat in the dark kitchen for an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the fridge, remembering how she used to leave sticky notes on it. Get almond milk. I love you. Don't forget your meds. It hit me then, we hadn't run out of notes. She'd just stopped writing them. At 12:37 a.m., she called. I let it ring. Then another call. I answered. Her voice was tight. Not panicked, just annoyed. Where did you go? I told her I wasn't feeling well. She paused. You could have said goodbye. I said I didn't want to make a scene. Then she asked, like she was testing the waters. Did something happen? I told her no. I told her the food didn't sit right. I told her I'd see her tomorrow. And I could almost hear the relief in her voice when I said that. Like she thought she'd dodged something. Like she'd gotten away with it again. But she hadn't. Because that night, I made a decision. A quiet one. The kind you make in your bones. If she was going to lie to me, then I was going to find the truth on my own terms. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to accuse. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to document everything. And when the moment was right, I'd let her bury herself with her own truth. She laughed like nothing was wrong. So I stopped playing my part in the script. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was consumed with rage, though that would come later, but because I was running calculations in my head. Scenarios. Possibilities. Ways to know for sure. A part of me still clung to the hope that I'd misread everything. That maybe I was just insecure, projecting all my failures onto her success, inventing betrayal out of boredom and wounded pride. But every time I replayed Barrett's voice in my head, those smug little words in the bathroom mirror, it didn't start how you think. I knew I wasn't imagining it. No man says that unless there's something to hide. And no man says that unless he's gotten comfortable with hiding. By morning, I had a plan. Nothing dramatic. Nothing illegal. Just an app. There's this software I used once when I was teaching online, a parental control tool designed to monitor student activity during remote exams. I remembered it because it was subtle, practically invisible, and could mirror messages from a paired device without needing a jailbreak or physical access every time. All I needed was 5 uninterrupted minutes with her phone and the courage to cross a line I never thought I'd cross in our marriage. Corinne always left her phone charging on the hallway console while she showered. I knew this because every morning at 7:12, like clockwork, the bathroom door clicked shut and the water started running for exactly 13 minutes. That morning, I sat on the couch pretending to scroll through news headlines while the seconds ticked down. My hands were cold. My heart was pounding like it wanted to escape my body. At 7:15, I got up, walked down the hall, and stood in front of her phone like it was a detonator. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. She trusted me. That's the funny thing about betrayal. It only works if the other person doesn't expect it. I installed the app, paired it with my old tablet, cleared the recent downloads, and put the phone back exactly where it was. It took me 97 seconds. I counted. Later that day, while she was at work, prepping for a quarterly sync, I opened the mirrored inbox and saw everything. To my surprise, there wasn't a flood of romantic texts. No, I miss you, or last night was magic, or anything incriminating at all. That's what made it worse. These weren't desperate lovers exchanging steamy secrets. They were professionals. Polished. Efficient. Emotionally clinical. At first glance, nothing would have raised a red flag. But then I noticed a pattern. Every Friday afternoon, like clockwork, Corinne and Barrett exchanged short, coded messages around 4:42 p.m. Always vague. Always within the same 5-minute window. No greetings. No names. Just phrases like, going with the glass one. Back in trance this time. Last door on the left. Same playlist. It read like choreography. Like a ritual. One message stopped me cold. It was from 3 Fridays ago. She wrote, leaving my ring in the desk drawer this time. Less to explain later. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. That tiny sentence collapsed the last standing pillar of denial inside me. Whatever this was, it wasn't innocent. You don't remove your wedding ring to brainstorm. I scrolled through the mirrored photos and found nothing. Checked emails. All work. I was about to close the app when I noticed something I'd missed. Voice notes. There were two. Short ones. One from her. One from him. I played hers first. My tablet volume was low, and I had to hold it up to my ear like I was eavesdropping on a conversation in the next room. Her voice came through calm, relaxed, even playful. You left your cufflink in the corner again, Professor. I'm keeping it hostage until next time. Try not to be too charming on your business trip. Or do. I kind of like knowing I'm not the only one who notices. I didn't press play on the second one for a long time. I just sat there, blinking, listening to the sound of my own breathing. My ears were ringing. My hands were trembling again. This time not from panic, but fury. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't explode, it sinks. When I finally played Barrett's voice note, it was less flirty, more matter-of-fact. Door will be unlocked. Park 3 spots over from the recycling bins, so you're not seen. I'll text when the crew leaves. No perfume this time. Last time it lingered too long on the scarf. He said it like they'd done this before. Like this was just another Friday. Like this was normal. I set the tablet down like it was radioactive. I stood up, poured myself a glass of water, and didn't drink it. My throat was too tight. This wasn't just a work fling. This was a system, a schedule, a coordinated, weekly betrayal that I had smiled through for God knows how long. And she had the audacity to kiss me on the cheek on those Fridays, with his fingerprints still on her back. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted more. Because something in me knew. This wasn't the full story. This was just the surface. And what was beneath it? That might be worse. I don't know why I followed her that Friday. Maybe because deep down I hoped she wouldn't go through with it. Maybe because I needed to see it with my own eyes, to burn the hope out completely. Or maybe I just wanted to catch her in the lie while she was telling it. There's something surgical about that kind of pain, something precise and irreversible. Like pulling a thorn out sideways. Corinne left the house at 3:18 p.m. on the dot. Said she had a late strategy wrap-up at the office and might be home late. I pretended not to hear her. Just nodded without looking up, as if I was too buried in some freelance article draft to care. But I'd already set the tablet on mute. Already packed the car with gas and snacks, and an extra hoodie to look less obvious if I had to sit for hours. She didn't take the usual route to her office. That was the first sign. Instead of merging onto the freeway like she always did, she detoured into a residential area near the edge of the city. Not quite suburbs, not quite downtown. A weird in-between place. Old warehouses, brick lofts, overpriced cafes with 3 tables each. She stopped in front of an apartment building with no signage. Just a steel door and an intercom. A place that didn't want to be found. I killed my engine and watched from a block away. It was Barrett who opened the door for her. I recognized the smug stance before I recognized the face. He barely looked around. No hesitation. No fear. She walked in ahead of him. Comfortable. Like she'd done it before. Like she knew exactly where the creaky stair was on the 3rd step. I waited 30 minutes. My hands were sweating despite the cold. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. It was something worse. Slow. Heavier. Like my body had accepted the betrayal before my brain had. At 4:09, I texted her. Hey, traffic bad. Should I start dinner or wait for you? She didn't answer. At 4:13, I texted again. You okay? At 4:21, she replied. Ugh, sorry, stuck on 84. Total gridlock. Don't wait for me. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time. She was lying to me while I watched her lie. I wanted to scream. To march up there. To kick down the door and rip the illusion apart. But I didn't. I just sat there, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned pale. Because I realized something sickening. This wasn't the first lie. It was just the first one I'd caught in real time. She'd been inventing traffic for weeks. Maybe months. Maybe even longer than I'd dared imagine. Every late call. Every team dinner. Every early flight. I'd accepted all of it like a damn fool. Because I trusted her. Because I thought we were still us. At 5:12 p.m., she walked out. Her hair was different. Loosened from the bun she wore earlier. Her cheeks slightly flushed, like she'd laughed too hard or drank too much wine. She adjusted her blouse twice before she even reached the sidewalk. Barrett didn't walk her out, of course not. She knew how to keep the optics clean. She looked both ways, checked her phone, then headed back to her car like a woman coming from nowhere. She called me at 5:34. I didn't answer. I couldn't fake normal anymore. She left a voicemail. Her voice was upbeat. Finally getting through this traffic. Should be home in 20. Did you eat? I listened to it 6 times. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I was fascinated by how convincing she sounded. You wouldn't know she'd just committed emotional manslaughter. You'd think she'd been in a boring meeting and was genuinely wondering if we had pasta or rice left. When she got home, I was at the kitchen table. Laptop open. Tablet hidden. Eyes calm. She kissed my head. I flinched. She asked if everything was okay. I said I was tired. Told her I might go to bed early. Told her the freelance stuff was stressing me out. She nodded, kissed me again, and said she'd clean up before joining me. She hummed while she washed her lunch container. She didn't ask any questions. Why would she? Everything looked the same. The illusion was still intact. But I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything. Her leaving the ring behind. The green tie. The coded messages. The way she lied to me while I watched her mouth move from a parked car just 50 feet away. This wasn't just an affair. It was architecture. Design deception. Blueprint betrayal. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. 3 days passed. Nothing dramatic happened. No new lies I could catch. No voice notes. No cryptic texts. Just the quiet rhythm of marriage between two people pretending nothing's broken. Corinne was on her best behavior. I could tell. She cooked dinner on Tuesday, even made that weird lentil soup I used to like back when we lived in our first apartment. She asked me about my editing projects. Smiled more. Wore her hair the way she used to in the early years. Pulled back with that simple black clip I always said made her look honest. I knew what she was doing. Damage control. Not because she suspected I knew, but because something in her felt off balance, like maybe she could sense my emotional withdrawal even if I hadn't said a word. Then Thursday came, and with it, the tiniest crack in her performance. It was just after lunch. I was on the couch, half watching some documentary with the volume low, letting my thoughts drift while she sat at the kitchen island typing away on her laptop. I heard her sigh. One of those frustrated, performative sighs meant to signal that she needed help without actually asking for it. A few seconds later, she called out, "Can I borrow your brain for a second?" I looked up. Sure. She turned the screen toward me. It's a client email. You're good with tone. I don't want it to sound too stiff. This was normal. She'd done this a dozen times before. Whenever she doubted how something read, a press release, a memo, a response to a passive-aggressive vendor, she'd ask me to scan it. It was one of the few ways she still included me in her world. So I walked over, read the email, and gave her a quick suggestion. Nothing major, just swapped one phrase for another. She nodded, said, "Perfect," then turned the screen back and went to click send. That's when I saw the name. Not in the email body, in the drop-down menu of draft tabs at the top of her browser. There were 4 open. One was the client email. 2 others were titled with vague subject lines, Q2 alignment, and executive recap. But the last one caught my eye. It was titled to N. Barrett, hold. I didn't react. Didn't blink. Just made a mental note of the exact phrasing, the position of the tab, the timestamp on her screen clock, 1:47 p.m. I walked back to the couch. Waited. 30 minutes later, she closed the laptop and said she needed to run out for a meeting. I kissed her on the cheek, said good luck, and watched her drive away. Within seconds, I was at her computer. It was password protected. Of course. I knew the code, her childhood zip code. She never thought to change it. Inside her email, I found nothing in the sent folder. Nothing in trash. Nothing in drafts. But I checked the offline cache in Chrome. A long shot. There it was. The draft to N. Barrett ad was still cached. She must have opened it earlier, maybe copied something, maybe forgot to close the tab. Whatever it was, it left a trace. And what I read made my chest tighten. The email was short. No greeting. No sign-off. Just a few lines, like part of an ongoing thread. It read, "Not yet. He's quiet lately. Maybe suspicious. I'll check the schedule again. Worst case, we postpone. You need to be patient. This only works if everything looks normal from the outside." That was it. No names. No dates. But I knew exactly what it meant. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a plan. Something coordinated. Something she hadn't told him she was rethinking. She was just telling him to wait. Like this was some long con. Like I was the idiot standing in the middle of a stage play where the actors had already decided how the final act ends. I closed the laptop. My hands were cold again, but not from fear, from clarity. She didn't just betray me physically. She was engineering my removal. strategizing how to ease me out of the picture quietly, like I was a piece of old furniture that had to be moved out of the living room before the guests arrived. And yet, I still didn't say anything. Not because I was afraid of losing her, but because I finally understood what she had to lose. If she was lying to him, and me, maybe the cracks weren't just in my life. Maybe his perfect little fantasy was built on something unstable too. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want confrontation. I wanted control. And to get that, I needed her to keep underestimating me. Friday morning started like every other. Nothing out of place, nothing suspicious, at least not to someone who didn't already know where to look. But I had trained myself to see the spaces between things, the gaps in her routines, the pauses in her sentences, the way she scrolled her phone a little too long before putting it down face first, like even gravity didn't deserve to see what was on it. She said she'd be working from home for the first half of the day, back-to-back calls starting at 9 a.m., and asked if I could keep things quiet. I told her, of course. I even offered to take my laptop to the coffee shop down the street, but she said it wasn't necessary. I think part of her liked the illusion of closeness, me in the next room, her working hard, everything seemingly normal. It helped preserve the theater of our marriage. She sat up at the dining room table like always, facing the window, earbuds in, laptop open, coffee to her left, water to her right, a little sticky note with her talking points beside her like she was prepping for a debate. By 9:03, she was on the first call. Muffled voices, soft laughter, a casual, professional tone. I kept my door half cracked, pretending to read a PDF while I watched her reflection in the microwave on the far wall. It sounds obsessive. Maybe it was. But when your entire reality has been called into question, you start watching for things most people never think to notice. The second call was supposed to be a client alignment session, according to her calendar. I only knew this because I'd memorized it earlier that morning when she left it open while brushing her teeth. The invite was labeled Internal Sync, Product Leads Only. 30 minutes blocked off. No video required. That was the key. At 10:37 a.m., she switched calls and put herself on mute. I saw her do it. The little gesture toward the trackpad, the silent confirmation glance at the mute icon. But 2 minutes later, she got distracted by something on her phone, probably responding to one of his messages, and I watched, in real time, as her cursor toggled the mute button off, without her realizing. She thought she was muted. She wasn't. I didn't rush to listen. I didn't grab my phone or run to the hallway like some soap opera husband. I just sat at the edge of the living room, out of her eye line, and listened as her voice changed. It was subtle at first. Her posture relaxed. The sharp, clipped rhythm of corporate speak dissolved into something softer, warmer. She laughed, not the kind of laugh you give your boss or client. The kind of laugh you give someone who makes you feel seen, safe, wanted. And then, clear as a bell, she said, "You're terrible. I can't believe you remember that. No, don't bring it up on the trip. I'll get all flustered again." There was a long pause. She was clearly listening, smiling, blushing even. Then she added, "I don't know how much longer I can do both. He's quiet. Lately, I think he suspects something. But he's not saying it. It's weird. He just watches me like he's collecting data." I froze. She was talking about me, not even bothering to disguise it. Just reporting on me like I was a science project. My silence, my hesitation, my pulling away, it hadn't triggered guilt. It had become ammunition, a subplot in whatever story she was spinning with Barrett. And she kept going. "No, he hasn't said anything. But I know him. He's not dumb. He notices everything and pretends not to until he's ready to say something impossible to argue with. That's the problem. He doesn't fight. He just absorbs." That last line broke me. Not because it was wrong, but because it was painfully, insultingly accurate. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of what I would do when I finally stopped pretending. But the call didn't end there. Barrett must have said something about the weekend, because she replied, "Yeah, I'll tell him it's a networking thing. He won't come. He never does. It'll be easier." A networking thing. That's what she was calling it now. That's what she had reduced this latest lie to. A sterile excuse she'd used before, one that I never pushed back on, because I didn't want to seem like the insecure husband whose wife had outgrown him. By the time she realized she was unmuted, it was too late. She toggled the button, straightened her spine, and shifted back into work mode so fast, it almost looked choreographed. I left the room silently, and sat in the garage for half an hour with the door down and the engine off, just breathing. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat in the quiet with the confirmation that every instinct I'd had was right. She wasn't just lying to me. She was strategizing around me. I was the variable she couldn't control, and that made me dangerous. Not because I'd explode, but because I wouldn't. Because I'd wait. And I'd let her walk right into the truth. There was no mention of it in her calendar. Not in the shared one. Not in the color-coded personal one she used for yoga classes and doctor appointments. Nothing. Just a conveniently vague event labeled Leadership Summit. Off-site, RSVP required. Placed neatly on Saturday afternoon, stretching through Sunday night. No location. No invite. No emails confirming a hotel. Just a block of time carved out like it was erased from the rest of our lives. But I already knew. She'd been more careful lately. The messages between her and Barrett were fewer. Shorter. As if they both sensed something pressing against the edges of their affair. The scent of discovery, maybe, or the anxiety of two liars trying to stay synchronized. I noticed how her body tensed every time I walked into a room. She'd started setting her phone screen to dim in under 10 seconds. She never left it face up anymore. And still, she kept underestimating me. Friday night, she was radiant, too radiant. She put on lipstick just to eat leftover curry, wore a dress for dinner, and said she felt like dressing up for no reason. She poured wine, made small talk about her manager's new obsession with wellness retreats, and casually mentioned how she'd probably be wiped out after this leadership thing. I just nodded. Didn't push. Didn't ask where it was. I smiled like I didn't already know that Barrett had booked a cabin upstate through a rental site that still sent its receipts in plain text email. She hadn't even bothered to make a fake reservation confirmation to show me. Just relied on the assumption that I'd never ask. She was right. I didn't ask. I just watched. And waited. By Saturday morning, I was already packed. Not because I planned to follow her, not directly. That would have been messy, risky, too obvious. No, I had a better idea. One built from the same quiet cruelty they'd both used against me for months. She left at 10:04 a.m., bag in hand. Light jacket. No hug goodbye. Just a quick, I'll call you tonight. Like she was heading to the grocery store and not into someone else's bed. I watched from the upstairs window as she pulled out of the driveway, checked her lipstick in the mirror, and disappeared down the street. She never noticed the tiny black tile tucked beneath the lining of her overnight bag. The GPS tag I'd bought weeks ago, still marked as gift for dad on the credit card statement. It pinged once every 30 seconds. Not precise, but enough. She drove for nearly 2 hours. Highway first, then smaller roads, winding into the trees. Around 12:11 p.m., she stopped near a private lake community with no gate, but plenty of distance from civilization. I knew the address. I'd seen it in Barrett's metadata. I even found the old rental listing, complete with photos, stone fireplace, rustic wooden beams, a lofted bedroom with skylights, and a patio built for romantic stargazing. She didn't call that night. At 8:19 p.m., I got a text. Today was long. We'll call you in the morning. Love you. No period. Just love you. Like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that I was already 2 towns away, staying in a roadside inn with bad Wi-Fi and curtains that smelled like mildew. I wasn't there to confront her. That wasn't the point. I had no interest in bursting through the cabin door and making a scene that would leave us both raw and theatrical. That kind of anger was for people who still believed they could fix things by raising their voice. I didn't want to fix anything anymore. I just wanted proof. By Sunday afternoon, I had it. I waited until they left for a hike. I knew they would because Corinne loved being active when she was playing someone else. I watched them from a distance as they laughed, linked arms, kissed twice when they thought no one was watching. She was wearing the green scarf I hadn't seen in months. The one I gave her on our 4th anniversary. When the cabin was empty, I walked in through the back door. No security, no alarm, just silence and the smell of sandalwood candles. I didn't touch anything. I didn't steal or break or even move a single item. I just walked the perimeter, took photos, receipts left on the table, 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom, her makeup bag beside his wallet on the nightstand, her wedding ring inside the zipped inner pocket of her tote bag. She'd brought it. She just hadn't worn it. Back in the car, I sent the photos to a hidden folder in the cloud, backed them up twice. Then I drove home, taking the long way, listening to a podcast I couldn't focus on. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I wasn't even heartbroken. I was done. And all that was left now was letting her walk straight into her own ending. She walked through the front door just after sunset. Hair windswept, lips slightly chapped, a weekend bag over her shoulder, and that same green scarf wrapped loosely around her neck like it meant nothing. She looked calm, content. She even whistled, softly, like she was returning from a quiet weekend with friends and not from a cabin built on lies. "Hey, babe," she called, dropping her bag by the stairs. "Sorry I didn't get a chance to call yesterday. Spotty signal. The whole place was in the middle of nowhere." She didn't know I knew the signal was strong enough to stream movies, that the rental had private Wi-Fi, and that Barrett had posted an Instagram story of the sunset the night before, one she probably didn't know he'd forgotten to hide from public view. I smiled. Not fake, not forced, just simple. "It's okay," I said, and I meant it. She looked surprised by how easy I made it. "Really?" she asked, almost cautiously. "Yeah," I replied, standing in the kitchen with a glass of water. "I figured you'd be tired when you got home, so I didn't plan anything heavy." She seemed relieved. She walked over, kissed me on the cheek, the same cheek she kissed every day before heading to Barrett's apartment. I didn't flinch this time. "Thank you," she said. I nodded. "I got you something." She blinked. "You got me a gift?" I walked over to the dining room table and picked up a small, neatly wrapped box. No ribbons. No elaborate presentation. Just plain brown paper, folded with care. I handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice shifting ever so slightly. "Something I thought you might need," I said. She opened the box slowly. Inside was a single printed photo, grainy but clear. The nightstand. Her ring. Barrett's wallet. The scarf. Everything. Behind it, a small card with 5 words written in my handwriting. "You don't have to lie." She stared at it for a long time. Her face didn't change at first. Not shock, not guilt, not rage. Just stillness. A moment of truth catching up to someone who thought they had more time. She looked up at me. "You don't need to explain," I said gently. "I already know. And honestly, I'm not here to argue, or cry, or make this ugly." "What do you want?" she asked, her voice brittle now. "To be free," I said. "And I think you do too." We stood there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only seconds. No yelling. No grand scene. Just the slow uncoiling of a lie that had wrapped itself around both of our lives for far too long. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," I continued. "You'll find the preliminary paperwork in your email tonight. I'm not asking for anything unfair. I just want clean lines. A calm exit." She nodded slowly, tears forming now, though I couldn't tell if they were from regret or relief. And then, as she went upstairs to pack a few things, I walked out into the backyard. The air was cool. The sky painted in fading orange and deep blue. I sat in the same chair I used to drink coffee in during better days, and I let it all go. Not with bitterness, not with vengeance, but with peace. Because I realized something. She had walked out on me months ago, emotionally, spiritually, piece by piece, but I had stayed. Not because I believed in love, but because I didn't know what life looked like without her. Now I did, and it looked like freedom. It looked like mornings where I didn't have to wonder. Nights where I could breathe without second-guessing the truth. Days where I wasn't performing the role of the understanding husband in a play I didn't audition for. She left that night. Quietly. No screaming. No defense. And when the door closed behind her, something opened inside me. A week later, I started therapy. A month later, I took a short road trip by myself, just to see how solitude felt when it wasn't forced on me. And one morning, 3 months down the line, I woke up to sunlight filtering through the window, and I made myself pancakes. Just for me. No lies. No tracking apps. No pretending. Just peace. And you know what? It felt like the first honest meal I'd had in years.